1,260 days of the mission of the sent ones. Because Paul is saying the following: when the Lamb unsealed, here there is no rapture, here there is martyrdom. University X, 72 classes, 11. Class. Luke, from 17 to 24, we will conclude today with Luke the Illuminated. Luke 17, continuing. The legalistic Bibles provoke Jesus by asking, since you claim to be the Messiah, where is the kingdom promised in the Bible? Jesus answered, do you think the kingdom of God will come in temples, palaces, and thrones? Then there are people who will read this and say, in my Bible, it doesn't say that this eagle is no longer reliable. But that's what he is saying. Because to understand, you have to study culture. Pharisaic, what were they expecting? For them to accept the Messiah, they expected the Messiah to bring a temple, palace, and throne, my son. So trust your teacher. And he says, do you think the kingdom of God will come in temples, palaces, and thrones? The Creator's kingdom is immaterial. Today I am here bringing the kingdom within your consciousness. But tomorrow, when I physically leave the earth, the religious will say the true Messiah has arrived because he brought the temple, the palace, and the throne. But it will be a mistake. Because although the kingdom has already arrived immaterially today, after the false Messiah, the immaterial kingdom will come to men like lightning, whose brightness goes from one end to the other of the sky. Those days will be like the days of Noah and Lot, where almost everyone was distracted. Almost everyone was distracted, wasn't it?
Yes.
Oh, distracted. Because when it talks about marrying, giving in marriage, in fact, it's not talking about marriage, it's talking about drinking, it's talking about distraction. The students, desperate to discern those difficult eschatological metaphors, finally asked, when, Lord? How will we know the day? He answered with another proverb of the time, where there is a carcass, there the vultures will gather. Reveal?
The best video I've ever produced.
It's very interesting, this issue of the Proverbs that Jesus speaks, because you must have spent hours in your life banging your head, trying to understand this proverb, right? But it doesn't matter. You spend hours and hours, right? Banging your head to understand the ravens, the vultures. I'll tell you why it doesn't matter. Because in the originals, the proverbs don't match. For example, this proverb, I'll talk about it in a moment. It has a different meaning. 1. Writer. We'll leave a proverb from the time when Jesus said it. I heard Jesus say this. They heard Jesus say this proverb. And another will say a different proverb. This doesn't happen just once. It happens several times, because Jesus often responds with proverbs from that time. Paul does this later as well. It's just that the proverbs don't match. Which is very funny, because Matthew will say he spoke one proverb, Luke will say he spoke another proverb. And sometimes there's a third author who comes into the story, and in his scholarship says it's another proverb. So, in reality, they are just proverbs that someone possibly heard him say one day. And sometimes he spoke all these proverbs, but maybe not in that context. In another context, he quoted many proverbs. So, you know Jesus a lot from the parables, which we call metaphors here. But Jesus wasn't just about metaphors, no. Jesus was about proverbs. Jesus spoke many proverbs. People think the proverbs were his, and they were proverbs that already existed. Greek proverbs, Persian proverbs. So here, in this revelation, what does this phrase mean? Thinking about the micro-apocalypse. 70 AD, when there is the war with the first corpses, there it is. The vultures, There will be the vultures. These prophecies will be partially fulfilled. Macro-apocalypse, where there are crowds, following a man, the corpse, there will be the deception. And another proverb used by Jesus as a synonym to understand this, just to give you an idea. In an original part of this text from Luke 21, listen to this, 17, sorry. Look, it's difficult to convey all this. In another, original part of Luke, the proverb they found is like this. Where there are reasons for judgment, write it down, there will be judgment. Where there are reasons for judgment, there will be judgment. That is to say, it's already another proverb for the same situation. So, when they asked, Lord, help us to know, discern, when these things will happen, Jesus said, where there is a corpse, the vultures will gather. Yet another writer says, no, he didn't say that. He actually said, where there are reasons for judgment, there will be judgment. So, see that it doesn't matter much. When I said it doesn't matter, it's not that the words of Jesus don't matter. Obviously not. Obviously not. Imagine you have someone who values us, right? Every word of his. But the proverb presented is varied, and the meaning is the same. What matters there is the essence. Actually, he's just, let's say, avoiding the topic. He's flouting the issue. Because they asked when. He dodged the question. What he wanted to show, he sidestepped. Because when he says where the corpse is, who's going to understand that? It's the kind of thing you'll only understand when it happens. Now, Professor ACA, after 2,000 years, can understand. Here it is, micro-apocalypse. Corpse. Macro-apocalypse, corpse. That's the interpretation. But back then, did anyone understand? They understood nothing. The disciples just didn't ask again, I didn't understand when, because they were afraid of bothering the master. We already asked once, should we ask twice? Understand? Did they misunderstand this issue of the Proverbs? So, it's not that it's not important, it's that. There are times when Jesus changes the subject. That is, Jesus, always, arrives when the world is in chaos. And I have a great revelation about this. Let's go, a great revelation. From Adam to Jesus, it was 4,000 years. Jesus arrived at the peak of religious ego, where they managed half of all the kingdom's taxes. Remember? And they were thinking, conspiring, about to stage a military coup in Rome. Because in 66, when they staged the coup, didn't they do it through the Zealots? Who were the Zealots? They were the Mossad of that time. They were creating a Mossad of zealots, trained men who knew how to fight, wield a sword, like no one else. To stage the coup in Rome, because the Roman soldiers were very well prepared, there were many more of them, they had much more money, and they wanted to stage a military coup and take Israel from their hands. And advance, and spread the idea of the Messiah, you understand? And these thoughts didn't sit well with Caesar. That's why Caesar filled Israel with soldiers, because he knew about this Israeli ego. Of, if possible, putting a king over them and dominating the world. Because when you know that your people have such an idea, don't you take precautions? Imagine you're a business owner and you have an employee who, in his religion or his idea, believes that one day he has to overthrow his boss and make himself equal. Have you thought about that? Did you know you have an employee who thinks like that? What do? You either surround him with guards and keep an eye on him, or you let him go. So Rome knew that taking care of Israel was difficult. That Israel has this notion of, the day we have the Messiah, we will dominate everything. And they were training the zealots for this. Do you understand? Keep understanding well. So, they wanted to take the state for themselves. They already had the temple. They had thousands of synagogues. Just in Jerusalem there were more than 400, according to historians, a lot of money and power. Today, after 2,000 years, the fire is still burning. The world is divided, denominational churches on every corner, church. In political power, to the point of being the state itself, look at the Vatican, theocracies, political parties of theocracies, of movements. Ultra-conservatives. Spreading. around the world and when? They raised what was torn down. What was torn down? What did Jesus vaccinate against that would be torn down? When they raised what was torn down, there we know Jesus needs to return because the vultures will already be there. Understood? There is a reason for judgment there. So, what did Jesus' proverb mean by the corpse or the reason for judgment? What he meant is, a crow only comes when someone dies. And judgment only comes when there is a crime. Basically, what Jesus is saying is this. Jesus is saying the following: it won't happen until it's meant to happen. There has to be the world's misfortune, the situation. So, what is this? I'll explain. In the micro-apocalypse, there would only be a corpse. When they were very rich, very powerful, and thus one step away from taking power in Rome. And isn't that what they tried? In 66 AD? Isn't that what they tried? Yes. What do you think Titus Flavius Domitian, Bishop of Domitian, with that huge name, arrived there in 70 and destroyed everything? Why do you think? Because they had suffered an attempted military coup in 66 and 67. Do you have any idea? So, to prevent another coup attempt, they went there and cut it at the root. Listen carefully to what I'm going to say. 2,000 years later, Professor Arco, just a little while ago, I saw a mayoral candidate. Next to her, a photo of Michelle Bolsonaro, like in your city, like everywhere. They're already preparing Michelle's image for 2026. She would be the first evangelical president in history, which is Brazil's dream. If you don't understand, we are once again close to a Sanhedrin. There is a PL 4606 to prohibit the creation of any Bible that is not from the SBB system, the Brazilian Bible Society. There is a bill in England and the United States to remove from the Bible the expressions that say the Jews killed Jesus and only mention the Romans. There are bills around the world with these ideas. There is a bill in Israel saying that Christians can no longer preach Jesus to them. So, there are several such ideas emerging from ultra-conservative parties in Austria, Hungary, Germany, even in France, which is left-wing, is reaching the far right with 33%. We are dealing with the same ideas as H. From the Second World War. Can you understand? That it was in the name of God, country, and family. God, above all. Folks, I'm not here campaigning against anything. I'm just telling the story. I'm talking about what happened and will happen again. And when this happens again, this ego, this peak, when the church is very rich, isn't it already? Aren't we already reaching that point? Where the churches are the power themselves? When the churches become very powerful, that they can do whatever they want. Because I don't know if you know, but those who sponsor Zionism for the Messiah of Israel to come are the evangelicals. They are the ones who sponsor it. It's the evangelicals who fill up planes to take to Jerusalem, tourism. It's the evangelicals who make all of this come to life in each region. Because you don't see a rabbi, you see a rabbi in your neighborhood saying, the Messiah is coming, the Messiah is coming. They don't need to, because they have pastors to do that. They have some priests to do that. They already do it for them. Do you understand? Why? Because the Christian church benefits from it. Because the Christian church is built on the apocalypse. The evangelical churches want this to happen for Jesus to come. But they don't realize they've fallen into the trap of making it happen. This is not being an instrument of God. Understand? So, the so-called corpse is almost here. The so-called reason for judgment is almost here. When again, listen carefully to what I'm going to say. I'm going to zoom in here. When again, Brazil, England, the United States, the world, Israel, are in that ego. To the point of having a class called Pharisees, Sadducees. Do you understand? I ask you, aren't we already in this? Don't we already have hundreds of thousands of doctors of divinity with rings on their fingers? Don't we already have a massive leadership with precious garments in all the churches? With mega salaries, mega temples, super temples, large temples, temples that cost 300 million to build. I ask you, aren't we already in this? So, look, this is a great sign of the corpse and the vultures. This is a great sign of Jesus coming. Luke 18. The other day, Jesus teaches, through a metaphor, with the moral to evolve the students to the point of understanding that, even on the most difficult days, they should remain constant. That this is the secret of the original Christian constancy. And they should continue asking the Creator for justice. So, even if you are being wronged, if life is bad, difficult, be constant. That's what he was teaching them, and not ritualistic prayers. But he said this to his students, who needed to learn to always trust that they were on the right path. Right. However, unlike them, he noticed that many who were there listening relied too much on their own faith. Faith, ego, religion, judging themselves saved, and condemning others who were not of their same faith. Look how interesting. First, he spoke to the disciples, then he spoke to the Pharisees. The disciples were those who needed to trust more in their faith. The Pharisees were those who needed to stop believing so much in themselves. Look at the difference. Do you understand why churches today are not Christian? It says evangelical church, it says Christian church, and it's not. Because Christians are those who need Jesus. To tell them, hey, you are on the right path, believe. Because the humility is so great that you always need to claim your faith. But it's not about claiming your faith because your faith is not strong. It's about claiming your faith by saying, I am obedient to this. On the contrary, the Pharisees are those who think they are always saved, to the detriment of others, even condemning those who are not of their faith. Can you see the immense difference between a Pharisee and a student? I ask you, the people who attend churches today, do they resemble more the disciples or the Pharisees? Look closely and see, look closely and think. So, the churches today, Christian ones, I ask you, are they Christian? Then, the teacher Jesus told another metaphor to them about the believer who always went to the temple to pray. And the tax collector who didn't even enter the temple stayed outside, because, in his relative truth, he didn't see himself as worthy. But it is he who left justified. After these teachings, a rich young man whom we have already discussed here, but Luke gives us an additional piece of information in the record. Because Luke records the moment when he says, "Good teacher, how do I get to heaven?" But first, Jesus refuted, knowing well the intentions of the rich young man, and asked, "Why do you call me good?" Reveal. Justice, mercy, and faithfulness. It's not the same thing that happens today when many Christians say God is good all the time God is good, but the intentions are wrong. See, this rich young man had the same thing, the same behavior as today of those who call themselves Christians. Then, we have the narration of the healing of the blind man by the roadside in Jericho, and after entering Jericho, and here it is. Luke 19, there was a very rich man, very rich indeed. We always remember Joseph of Arimathea, Joanna, Susanna, Jairus, so many rich people who followed Jesus, but we forget about him, who was very rich, perhaps even richer than the others. Zacchaeus. Because Zacchaeus was the chief tax collector, can you imagine? If a tax collector like Levi, Matthew, was already rich, imagine his boss. So, before we address saying that disgrace is the evil done, the subdivision of chapters and verses in the Bible came later. It wasn't done originally. The Bible was a scroll, a roll, and it was never divided into chapters and verses by the disciples, nor by the teachers, nor by the apostles, but later, by the Catholic institution, which divided it into chapters and verses and was later confirmed by the evangelical institution. And this subdivision from Luke 18 to 19 is one of the great disgraces, because the context here is interconnected, and you will understand now. Zacchaeus really wanted to see Jesus. He wanted to know who Jesus was. He had heard about him, but since he was a very short man, because of the crowd, he didn't give up. He didn't give up because he was short, there was a crowd, he didn't give up. On the contrary, he ran ahead of everyone. He ran ahead of everyone, small as he was, running, and climbed a tall sycamore tree. To see him, the Bible mentions a sycamore tree. Some people think it is thorns. A wild sycamore is just because it is very large. Wild sycamore. It's because this type of sycamore would destroy crops. It spread very quickly and destroyed the crops. It took nutrients from other plants, killed the other plants, it wasn't good. Shall we see? Listen to what I'm going to say. He went to the tall sycamore to see him. When Jesus arrived, he saw Zacchaeus up in the tree and said, "Come down quickly, Zacchaeus," knowing his intentions, knowing Zacchaeus' heart. "I want to stay at your house today." But interestingly, up to this point, Zacchaeus had swindled many people. Just like Pablo Markel did back when he was 17. However, even though he had swindled many people, he really wanted to change his life forever. Do you understand what we've been talking about? In the last lessons, especially in the 10th lesson about when the truth arrives, you have to do the math. To be able to sign the contract and say I am a Christian, the church says to accept Jesus and be baptized, but to say you are a Christian, you have to do the math. If you are really going to follow through to the end. And what did Zacchaeus do? He was the man of mathematics. He was the chief of mathematics. He did all the calculations. And he said, I want to follow this man to the end. It's my only opportunity. But imagine imagine an extremely logical person doing calculations and saying, this is my last chance. Folks, he calculated grace in equations. He transformed grace into a matrix, into numbers. In binary pattern, he said, look, this, plus this, divided by this, added to this, to the power. Such is my last chance. The grace upon me is now. That's why I, running ahead of everyone, went there. Zacchaeus came down quickly, very happy. It's funny that everything said about Zacchaeus is very fast. Do you know what it means? Appreciation. Because when you say, come here and help me, and the person comes very slowly, they are appreciating. There are people you say, come here and help me. They say, they come quickly. Appreciation. Did you know? People are there doing psychotechnics. Are you a psychologist watching me now? They keep doing little tests, interviews, I don't know what, to find out which employee is better to hire for a certain company or for your boss. Oh, spare me. It's simple. Just take a look at the 10 candidates and say, come here and help me. Whoever arrives first is hired. Because you can see, when you say, come here and help me, you get up like this. Do you really want this job? Not at all. Do you want salvation? Not at all. Zacchaeus ran, came down quickly, tearing himself up from the tree. Let's go, reveal it. It wasn't my cloak that healed you. Your faith healed you. Jesus had just finished teaching about wealth. I'm going to show you something that's not even in the Codex Bible. This subdivision of chapters is cursed. Jesus had just finished teaching about wealth. He had just left a rich young man, sad for being tested. And now, in the same context, Luke reveals to us that. Rachel. So you're going to write down, rich young man. And then you're going to write Zacchaeus. You've never seen this. You've never perceived it this way. Today you will see it. You will write rich young man. Everyone remembers the rich young man. But no one remembers Zacchaeus. In the same context, a rich young man who left, making it seem impossible for a rich person to pass the test. Didn't ye leave it like that for us? The way he left, sad. It seems like there's no way. Even Peter asked. It's impossible. It's impossible, Lord, then. There's no way. But now Zacchaeus, besides being rich and powerful, much richer than the rich young man, chief of the tax collectors, chief of all the tax collectors for Rome, Israel. And he wasn't just rich, he was powerful. He attains salvation. It's incredible, isn't it? It's beautiful, isn't it? That Luke makes a point in his research to record a rich young man who leaves sad, and a rich man who welcomes Jesus into his home, who comes down from a tree happy. It's beautiful, isn't it? Two rich men. Jesus already answered Peter, it's answered. Is it possible to save a rich man? There it is. The religious leaders started saying, now, Jesus has gone too far. He already has a tax collector among his main followers, Matthew. He dined with many sinful tax collectors. And now, he's going to stay at the house of their chief? These are the religious leaders pointing the finger. What did I say? Pointing the finger. Before this lesson, what did I say? That it's subdivided, those attending the lesson don't know, that's why I'm going to record it again. I said that many people point to the White House, to Brasilia, and mock the politicians. Look there, see? The candidates are involved in this. And in that, harassment and crime, and corruption, and embezzlement. Blah, blah, blah. But they've already reprogrammed, they've already cleansed their souls. You never thought like that, did you? But their mistakes have already come to light, public. And yours? When a person runs for office, everything comes out, anything goes. They do a sweep, scrutinize all your mistakes, possible and impossible, and bring them to light. And yours? Are they hidden? Not from the politicians. Well, you point the finger and say, oh, there, the politician's mistake, but it has already come to light. And yours? Zacchaeus said, look, Lord, all those whom I once overcharged in taxes, whom I abused with interest upon interest, I will repay 4 times more to each one. Do you know what's most beautiful? The difference, the duality of the text. First, the rich young man had to have Jesus teach him what he had to do. But here, no one needed to teach him. He said, I already know what I have to do. I have to do what is right. Metanoia means correcting my mistakes, my past. That's God's mathematics. So, I ended up extorting some people. I ended up overcharging. I exaggerated on the interest. That's why I got rich. With the authority of Rome, I did this. Rome was happy with me. The priests were happy with me, but now I'm going to do this. Does anyone have an idea in this, the upheaval in Zacchaeus' life? It's not recorded, but I wouldn't be surprised if Zacchaeus was arrested and killed shortly after. Does anyone have an idea of the upheaval, and this man had to flee from there? If you don't know, he charged interest upon interest and got rich. Rome and Israel. The matter of him taking his possessions and going there, and giving 4 times more to each poor person he robbed, that's his problem. The NAFCA does it, Rome just did like this. That's his problem if he wants to take his assets. Are you foolish? Because if this Jesus convinced him, the hear of Jesus convinced him, and now he wants to act like a saint? And wants to return money to the people he owed it to? That's his problem. Listen well. But from the moment he changes his mindset, metanoia, he will never again charge abusive interest upon interest, nor will he extort. And since he will never extort again, how can he be the chief of the tax collectors? If Rome and the temple wanted a chief who collects, who extorts, who takes advantage, who abuses interest rates, did you understand or not? Yes. As a new creature, now he can no longer charge interest upon interest. He can only charge what is fair. And what happened to Zacchaeus' job? He had to change his line of work. I don't know what happened to Zacchaeus. We'll only find out there. One of the things we'll find out. Zacchaeus played the movie of Zacchaeus. I want to see the story of Zacchaeus in my eye. Put it in my brain. What do I want to see about Zacchaeus? I want to see what happened to him. Is it or is it not? Right? Because I'll tell you. That man suffered, huh? And what's most beautiful, no one needed to teach him. He said, I know what I have to do. Let's see if Jesus liked it or not. Zacchaeus, today salvation has come to this house. Folks, Jesus said that only a few times, huh? Jesus is tough, you know? Jesus is tough. Jesus doesn't say those things, no. Only a few times, you know? Jesus liked what he said so much that Jesus said, today, salvation has come to your house, Zacchaeus. It's beautiful, isn't it? Very. It's very different from looking at a young man and saying, do you want to be perfect? It's quite different, right? It's quite different, isn't it? The most beautiful thing. Jesus told the metaphor about financial investments. Right after. They started to criticize, didn't they? Look at how Jesus is. This methodology. I was watching you all yesterday during the review. And you remembered this. That was very good. Did you remember? Regarding the preaching of Jesus, like Jesus himself, what is Jesus' didactic method? What is his pedagogy? He flows didactically according to the themes. So he is arriving there, then he sees in the tree. He already knows the intention, he calls. He is at your house, was received, the crowd stayed. Outside Zacchaeus' house, curious, trying to see something. Jesus, most likely, as usual, went to the window. And before having a banquet, sleeping at Zacchaeus' house, looking at the crowd outside to give attention to everyone, do you know what he said? I'm going to speak now. Jesus didn't. Look, just. What is the theme that Jesus is going to teach? Theme of investment, of finances. Because if Zacchaeus' life involves this, if he was a tax collector who works with investment, what is he going to do? He told a metaphor about financial investment. Where? Each of 10 men received a sum of money. A mina, there in your Bible, is a large sum of money. So write down 10 men, each man, 1. Mine. 1. When the Lord returned crowned king, because many did not want him, he had many enemies, people did not want him to be king. And he managed to defeat the enemies and returned as king. And I want you. No, in this metaphor, it is different from the others. Talent equals money. It is different from those people who served the Lord, who was well off, financially. Here, they took a mina from someone who had many enemies and was going to another place to be crowned king. That is, there was a danger of him dying or things not working out or not being crowned, although he was a man from a noble family. So this, in itself, is already a filter, because many people think like this, I will not work with this money that was left to me for someone who might not even become king. You know what? It's different to work for a president and to work for someone who was a presidential candidate. Is it different or not? They were working for someone who was a candidate. But even so, one took. Look, one took a mina, a large sum of money, and made 10 out of it. 10 times more, multiplied, invested 10 times more. And God, here represented by this king, after he returns as king, he says, you will govern over 10 cities because you turn 1 mina into 10. Listen to what I'm going to say. You know, this metaphor is so deep, so profound, that he spoke in Zacchaeus' house, because, besides having to do with everything in Zacchaeus' life, with money and everything else, he is still talking about a candidate for king, and it's not him. Was he already a king? He wasn't a king yet. He's a candidate for Messiah, a candidate for king. And do you know what he is revealing here? He is revealing the scrutiny that is serving Jesus in those days. Because one thing is to serve Jesus after he is already king. Another thing is to serve Jesus, who is a candidate. To give you an idea, there are 3 phases. The first phase is that, in those days, serving Jesus was worth much more than today. Because, in those days, he was not yet king and had not resurrected. So, following Jesus in those days, believing in a Jesus who was a candidate, who hadn't even died yet and hadn't resurrected yet, does it have more value or not, does it? Yes. Today we already have him with a crown. Today we are Christians, serving a king who already has a crown. But even so, we have more value than the third group. The third group is the one later on, already within the kingdom, who, even seeing him there, yes, physically, will still doubt. So there are three groups in three phases. Then comes the second, accounting. He said, "Sir, long before you were king, when you were a candidate, I took 1 mina and turned it into 5. Then God says, so you will govern 5 cities. Then comes the third. The third says, I kept what you gave me. Inside a cloth of leather. A leather, a cloth, a chest, it doesn't matter. And I kept it. Because I knew you are a harsh man. And out of fear of you coming back to laugh or not, at least I kept it. Reveal, with a better end, you have already provided throughout my life. Then, the Lord responds exactly what we taught in the original examples, always confirming exactly what I taught. I will judge you by your own relative truth, by what you believe. Do you know what that Lord, who is now king, says? I will judge you by what you say. You, even in your words, are saying that I am harsh. And he is dual. Deuteronomy 28, the Kabbalah is Geburah. The God who is severe, which is what Yahweh, Jehovah means. And even knowing that I am severe, you did not invest, did not produce, but others multiplied what I entrusted to them, and because they have multiplied now, you will give that money to the one who multiplied it by 10. In other words, the one who multiplied by 10 receives what you did not invest. Because the one who multiplied by 10 is the person who will do the best thing. The best investment with my money. Wow, folks, this is very deep. Oh, if I had time here for us to discuss this here. This is a lesson that the School of Jesus has in your city to have the class all day, discussing. Now, Luke narrates the passage of the little donkey, which we have already addressed. Upon entering on a donkey, hundreds of students shouted, "This is our king sent by God." Did you notice or not? He was in the house of that. And he spoke of a candidate for king. And now he is here, on top of the donkey, candidate for king. It's incredible, isn't it? Is it connected or not? It's that people don't realize. What do you think? People didn't realize those days when they were right in front of him, and they don't realize today. Angry, the religious leaders said to Jesus, "Teacher, rebuke your students. They are idolizing you." Shouting, "Hosanna, Hosanna." I tell you, he replied, if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out, reveal, which is easier to say, your sins are forgiven, or get up and walk. And today, what are the stones? It has to be recorded in this pocket Bible. It has to be recorded in these 72 lessons, which will remain until the return of Jesus, University X. What are the stones today? AI. The metaverse, hologram, quantum, ufology. If there are no students and teachers to teach the truth, there are plenty of stones to teach. Jesus, upon entering Jerusalem, wept bitterly and said, before we see what he said while crying, let it be recorded. If these do not cry out, the stones will cry out. At another moment, he said, responding to the Pharisees again, he said, do you think I cannot raise up children for Abraham from these stones? Because, at the time, the religious people had a pleasure in saying, I am a Jew, from the tribe, a son of Abraham. So, to put an end to their ego, Jesus said, even from the stones I can raise a son of Abraham. Do you see? In truth, what does Jesus combat? The ego. Is not your speech, it's what is behind your speech. Days will come when your enemies will build trenches against you. Folks, this here is incredible. And they will surround you and encircle you on all sides. They will also throw you to the ground, you and your children, destroying everything. Because you did not recognize the time that God chose for the true Messiah. Wow. He said he was teaching micro and macro apocalypse, but Jerusalem would be surrounded. The pastors think this is going to happen now, but it has already happened in parts. And he is saying it's because they did not recognize God's timing. They did not expect that Jesus would come in the way he did, in that packaging. Jesus tells the metaphor already in Luke 20 of the vineyard. And he signs again with 3 men sent to receive part of the harvest's yield. When all 3 were killed by the hands of the farmers who wanted to stage a coup against the Lord. Seeing that the vineyard had made a lot of money, they thought, let's stage a coup. He sent the first farmer, they killed him. No, the first messenger, they killed. The second messenger, they killed. The third, they killed. Who killed them? The farmers. Then the Lord said, I will send my own son, who is my heir, and perhaps they will respect him. Look at the metaphor. But they also killed him. Because they knew he was the heir. Now they killed for real, because they thought, this one is the son, he is the heir. If we kill him, there will be no one left to inherit. Now, the entire inheritance is ours. Does anyone understand the depth of this? That's what I say. I can't delve into your time. If I were to delve into this here, just to give a brief overview, a simple preview. Israel killed Jesus to keep the entire inheritance, to not share God's inheritance with the pagans, you and me. Because when they saw a candidate for king who said, I will share your inheritance with the whole world. No, you will share with the whole world, you will die. We want a candidate. We want to elect a candidate so that the entire inheritance stays just for us. Is anyone understanding? This metaphor is so simple that no one understands. It's so simple, but no one understands. A metaphor that reveals why Jesus died. Who killed Jesus? I want to see this bill from the United States and England that want to edit the Bible because they can, right? I want to see them edit the Bible and remove these parts that can't be removed. They will have to remove everything. Because all of Jesus' metaphors, directly or indirectly, are saying the same thing. Did you know that? So, the owner of the vineyard came and killed. Is God good all the time? The owner of the vineyard came and saved, forgave, understood, killed all the laborers, and gave the vineyard to the righteous. What is this? Killed 1, killed 2, killed 3, killed the son. And you want God to be good all the time? Wow. Huh? Reveal. That metaphor was so terrible that when they heard it, the people had a strange reaction. The people said, may that never happen. But Jesus said, it has already happened. They have already killed the prophets. I sent 1, look at this nature. I sent 2. I sent 3. They killed, and killed. All who were sent. And now, they will kill the firstborn heir of God. People. Look, there's no way. All of this is very powerful. Very powerful. But later, all the religious workers who persecute, those who teach the truth, will die. And the vineyard will belong to the righteous. I want you to write it like this. Workers, farmers, laborers. Because when it's a worker, it's what the churches use. The worker is the mason of the work. When he is going to talk about the cornerstone now, which I haven't even gotten into, he will talk about the stone rejected in the Old Testament, Tanakh. He will talk about the laborers who reject the cornerstone. But within the metaphor, they were the farmers, because he is talking about a vineyard. Whatever the synonym may be. He said, after everything, this is the apocalypse, this is the apocalypse, after everything, those who killed. Folks, look, I'm going to tell you something. You're watching me now. You're saying, Professor, I would never kill. Elijah, Moses, no prophet, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Obadiah, Jesus, no one. But your church says that one is a heretic Satanist. And if there were a constitution and an evangelical president, a Sanhedrin, for having made this Bible and for teaching what I teach, I would have to be exiled from the country, imprisoned, or killed. It's only because we are still in different times. But in times when theocracy is already returning. If you haven't understood yet, I will explain it another way. If you belong to a denomination that is part of this joint system, your denomination belongs to this universe of churches. Called Christianity, linked to Judaism, where there is the Jewish grandmother, Catholic mother, and Protestant daughters. And all, together, to God, it is just one thing. And if you still belong, after watching me, after understanding what I am teaching, proving, every day here, we are in the 11th lesson, I have already proven. So much evidence. I don't even need 10 lessons to understand everything. If you continue there, you are complicit, you are a co-participant, you are part of the system of workers and laborers who killed Jesus and the prophets. Then one was sent. They killed 2, 3, and the Son, you say, I love Jesus, I praise Jesus, I pray to Jesus, I would never kill Jesus, but you belong to the system that killed him. And it is written, those who persecute, those who teach the truth, will die, and to whom will the vineyard go? Whose will the vineyard be now? In your Bible, it is written that the cornerstone would be rejected by the workers. And then Jesus reveals himself, I am the cornerstone, the stone with an angle. When the theologians understood that this teaching was a threat from Jesus because they interpreted it that way, they began to conspire even more for his arrest and death sentence. From that day on, listen what I am going to say. From that day on, because of this metaphor I just mentioned about the vineyard. Because many metaphors they did not understand. This one they understood. They interpreted it and said, is it us? Is he saying he's going to kill us? They thought he would take power one day. And when he becomes king, he will kill us. He is talking about his revenge. Didn't they understand? From that day on, the temple leaders paid spies, who pretended to be students, it's written in your Bible, to listen to everything he taught and report him. So Luke narrates what we have already seen, the various spies who sought to incriminate Jesus. If you didn't understand this, I will explain it to you. You know all that we've already seen? The Pharisees coming and asking about divorce, then the Sadducees asking about the woman who was married to 7 brothers, with which one she would be married in the kingdom, then the issue of taxes, Caesar, Caesar, God, God. Those scribes, all that we've already seen, Luke, in his research, reveals to us that it was because of this metaphor of the vineyard that they felt threatened. They hired spies, paid spies. And it was these spies who went there to publicly incriminate him on issues of divorce and taxes to try to take him away, already bound and shackled. And they didn't succeed. My God, people. Folks, now it becomes very clear why. These people would come and say, Great Teacher Jesus, you are a master of wisdom. No one teaches like you do. You are an upright, just, and kind man. Why? because it was part of the espionage. And then you have to understand as much as possible. Didn't I talk yesterday about the 3 types of students? One of them is which? Not yesterday, lesson 9 and 10. I will follow you forever. That's the problem. Jesus was surrounded by spies, infiltrators, fakes, and imposters who pretended to be students, saying, I will go with you. When the exaggeration was too much, every exaggeration reveals a need. These exaggerations were characteristics of someone who was forcing themselves to be what they are not, pretending to be, to try to incriminate him. Luke 21, on the day of offerings, remember the widow? The students praise the luxury of the great temple and hear from Jesus. The temple, and the synagogues. They will arrest you. But don't worry, I will give you wisdom to know how to defend yourselves. Imagine the reaction of these students, right? Praising the temple and suddenly hearing that it would persecute them. Many will rise against you. Even religious members of your own family, but it is by persevering that you will gain life. This expression is very interesting. It is by persevering that you will gain life. Why? It's very, because you know that expression from Matthew 24, which says he who perseveres to the end will be saved. That text is a dispute among Adventists, Jehovah's Witnesses, Assemblies of God, and Baptists. They are still arguing due to it. What does it mean to persevere until the end of what? Persevere until the end of the Great Tribulation? Persevere until the end of times? Persevere until the end of your life? Persevere in what? What is it talking about? And there's nothing at all. Now, in Luke, you understand that it's within a different context. Actually, what Jesus said was the following: you will suffer in the family, you will suffer with the synagogues. Many people will be against you. You will have many enemies. Just persevere, and you will have life. That's all. It's within this context. So, that text, the way it's presented there in Matthew, remains like that, allowing people to dichotomize, divide, and misinterpret, creating confusion and divisions. When, in fact, Jesus is just saying the following: continue, be constant, go to the end, and you will have life. That's it. There's nothing mystical about it. After the first micro-apocalypse, Jerusalem will be trampled by non-Jews until their times, who? The non-Jews are fulfilled. After the time of the non-Jews in Jerusalem. There is a time for this to end. And what is the time for this? Philosophy knows this. 2,000 years, 2 days, write it down. Thursday and Friday will bring the second apocalypse that we call the macro-apocalypse. Reveal. Here is what is greater than what I have. It is without today, even on Saturday. It is clear that, after 2 days of the Jews have passed, leaving the tourists. Here it is talking about the evangelicals who make pilgrimages to Jerusalem. Here it is talking about us. That any one of us here will one day go to Jerusalem and put a little dust on that ground. Or spread the dust that is there. Treading on that places for 2,000 years. When that time ends, do you know what comes? Look at the reveal. After 33, there will be signs in the sun, delta, moon, stars. On earth, the nations will be in anguish and perplexity, with roaring and the agitation of the sea that will invade the cities. Do you know when the sea will really invade the cities? After 2033. With a calculation error of the calendar, maybe 29 to 33. Men will faint from terror, apprehensive of what is coming upon the world, and the heavenly powers will be shaken. That's why you will see some of the celestial bodies that are about to pass close to Earth or collide with Earth, are after 2033. You can research it. We always show it here on GT. All after 33, because it's within this. Here is one of the few times Jesus speaks openly about a macro-apocalypse. It's the apocalypse of Jesus. If you read Matthew 24, you stay very much in the micro. If you read Mark 13, you stay very much in the micro. But when you go to Luke 21 and 22, you have macro, especially these verses here. Then, after all these signs, they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Then Jesus comes. Before all these signs happen? Answer: no. So all these signs must happen first. Then, after all this, he will come. Just as it was in the cloud, just like a fig tree, another metaphor, sprouts in the spring, and when it sprouts in the spring, it announces the summer, too. After these signs, the macro-apocalypse will come. What am I trying to say? That, when in 2029, 30, 31, 32, 33, we start to see the sea invade the cities. Remember this date, remember this lesson, lesson 11. When we start to see signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars and celestial bodies falling to earth. Then, summer is near, it's still spring. Then, right after, comes summer. And what is summer? It's summer everyone will see. He. It wasn't supposed to be a pun, right? Everyone will see the summer, right? Everyone will see Jesus. That's the macro. Be careful. Why? Because of the delay, many will become distracted. Involved. It's Jesus speaking, okay? Look at the originals. Because of the delay, many will become distracted, involved in drugs, alcohol, life's anxieties. Look at what Jesus said. Here it's me saying, wallowing in material things, but anxiety he mentioned. Because when he talks about anxiety, he's talking about money. Every time Jesus talks about anxiety, he talks about people worried about paying bills. It's people concerned with material things. And unexpectedly, the terrible day will come upon them. Jesus was teaching the distracted. Jesus spent the day teaching in the temple courtyard in front of the services in masses. And in the evening, he would go out to spend the night on the Mount of Olives. Almost always, Jesus did this. Luke 22. Here begins the narration of the crucifixion, which, in part, we have already addressed. And we will delve deeper into the book of John, the last account. Then, yes, we will do a detailed crucifixion and resurrection. I only highlight what Luke brings us as different information from what Matthew, Mark provided. What are the different pieces of information? There's a phrase that we didn't know Jesus said. Peter. And it's interesting, every time God does something twice. One of the things that proves Jesus is God. He is God himself is this language because God has this trait. Every time he wants to emphasize something, especially when a pastoral message comes, he repeats someone's name twice. So, woe, fallen. Truly, Peter. When he, especially if he is naming someone, if he says it twice, then there's a reprimand coming. I do this sometimes with some people. Look, Peter, soon your ego will sift you like wheat in a sieve. But evil will not prevail. And in your life there will be Satan, but Satan is this, it's his ego. What was Jesus preparing him for? That he was going to go through a great moment of experience, where he would deny, lie, know Jesus, be a student of Jesus. By only 2 swords, just to protect ourselves, because tonight will be more difficult. It's very interesting, because believe it or not, many religious people today, other right-wing conservatives, use this text out of context. They don't cite this verse that I'm mentioning, they avoid it and say that Jesus taught all the disciples to carry weapons. When, in fact, Jesus said, do not take a sword, Matthew 10. And here on this day, on the Mount of Olives, he said, remember what I told you about not taking a sword? Today will be different. Today I want you to sell your cloak because there's no money. I don't know if there's money to buy a sword, is there? No, I know because Judas, right? Judas disappeared, right? Where is he? Where's the money, right? It disappeared. There was a lot of money while Judas was around. Judas took everything. Sell a cloak and buy 2 swords. Just for this night. Do you understand? Now, what are 2 swords against 100 armed men? So, did Jesus want to start a revolt? Was he teaching everyone to carry weapons? Is that it? That's not it. It never was. When on the Mount of Olives, hundreds of armed officers arrived with Judas to arrest Jesus. The disciples said, "Lord, shall we attack with the swords?" See how they don't understand. Why do you think Jesus said to buy only 2? It's good to have some weapon for protection for those who really know how to use it. Now, if there were more, imagine the chaos that would ensue. With just 2, they already swung a sword, almost cutting off Mark's head. Imagine if there were 12 swords. Until Jesus said, "No." Many heads would have already rolled. And then, how would Jesus prove that he is not a leader of a rebellion? Isn't it true? There's always a way to prove it, right? I was in the temple courtyard every day, in front of all of you, and you never arrested me. But now, here on the mount, away from the city's eyes, you arrested me like a conspirator or terrorist. Remember that the Universal Engine called us terrorists back in Solomon's time? You know, it's one of the things they might call us in the future. Imagine a Sanhedrin, a theocracy together with AI. Imagine evangelical rulers with the Bible and AI together, and AI investigating us, used by them. It will happen. AI against AI, right? And imagine this AI investigating us, and the many eyes of the world, drones everywhere, cameras everywhere, and them saying that the philosophy is that you are a terrorist. Can you imagine? But this is your time, the time of darkness. I'm just bringing up this part because this addendum is very good. It's something we haven't seen in the other Gospels. Luke is saying that Jesus said they attacked him at night, stealthily, on the Mount of Olives, because they belong to the darkness. They operate in the dark, away from the eyes of the city. I mean, they like this time. Not that day. We're in the street, but they went out to arrest Jesus, quietly, in the dead of night, in secret. I mean, Jesus is saying, you like the darkness, right? You belong to the darkness. Luke 23, Pilate responded to Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He asked, "Pardon, you say so?" Jesus replied to Pilate, "Look how interesting this is." Pilate sent him to Herod. And if you didn't know, Herod was a political adversary of Pilate. And because of Jesus' jurisdiction, because they mentioned Galilee, because he was afraid to condemn him. Look, first, Pilate didn't want to condemn Jesus. He was afraid. He didn't want to have that burden on his head, especially because Pilate's wife liked Jesus a lot. And it's interesting that there's another duality here. Because you have a Pilate who is left-leaning, and the wife likes Jesus. And you have Herod, who is right-leaning, and the wife doesn't like Jesus. It's a violent political scissors here. When Herod saw Jesus, he was very happy. Remember that Herod wanted to see Jesus. For hours, several times, you have to remember that Jesus sent word, "Tell Herod, that old fox." From Duzuma. Or no one said anything to Herod to spare Jesus, like, let's just listen to the teacher here, but let's not speak to Herod. That's it, because otherwise Herod will kill your master. Did you see what Jesus asked to say to Herod? Call him an old fox. And what am I saying? Either no one spoke, or they spoke. It reached his ears, and he falsely said, "Come here, bring him here." Remember when he was a child, Herod's family? Because the Herodian family has a tradition of death, right? When Jesus was a child, didn't they say, "Bring him here because I want to worship him"? It's the same trick. Now that he is grown, bring him here because I want to worship him. Since he was little, right? This is the life of a former Christian, of a turquoise blue fish. When he was little, bring him because I want to worship him. When grown, bring him because I want to worship him. Worship him. Look, just one thing that needs to be made clear here is that, besides being political adversaries, Pilate did not want to condemn him. And he only sent him to Herod because Herod was in Jerusalem, coincidentally, during those days. Coincidentally. Sergio, that Herod would be there coincidentally. He heard that Jesus was arrested and said, I'm going there. And so, Herod, seeing Jesus, was very happy because he had wanted to for a long time to see him. From what they had heard about him, but what was the intention? Was it good? He hoped to see him perform a great miracle. He killed John the Baptist, even if it was through his daughter, even if it was by the scheme of his wife, which was, in fact, incest. Even so, he killed Jesus' cousin, right? He killed the great righteous prophet, Jesus' cousin, in a brutal way. So, it's not that Jesus doesn't forgive. Here there is no forgiveness. Here it's evil for those who are evil. It's justice. He questioned with many questions. Jesus answered Herod. But Jesus did not give him an answer. Then Herod and the soldiers ridiculed him and mocked him, dressing him in a splendid robe. They sent him back to Pilate. You will look and say, see how there's no affection. The teacher keeps defending the politician, but Herod is there. He ordered the soldiers to ridicule, to put the robe on him, saying, look at the king there, put the robe on him. Isn't he a king? Put the luxurious robe on him. But actually, folks, as much as Pilate did this, he did it because of his ego. Because he thought like this, I have the power to save you from all of this here. Does it cost you to perform a miracle? You performed miracles in so many places. If you do anything that I believe, I'll free you from jail. I'll get you out of prison. He couldn't see. The ego wouldn't allow it. But what's more incredible is that he returns to Pilate. However, he doesn't condemn Jesus. One thing you have to understand is that when he comes to Pilate again, Pilate says this in front of the people. Do you want to condemn this man? Did you know that even Herod didn't condemn him? He says this. He says, not even Herod condemned him, meaning not even Herod. So, even after Pilate defended him 3 times, even after defending him 3 times, Jesus was condemned by the religious leaders and a large part of the people. Which people? Religious people incited by the leadership. As the crucifixion began, Jesus saw a large number of people crying for him. There was a large number of people, I don't know, 50, 100, 70, crying for him. And among these people, many who were lamenting were women. Do you know what he said to them? He was already carrying the patibulum. And when he was carrying the patibulum of the cross, not the cross itself, he turned and said to them, daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep for yourselves and for your children. Then you might say, but why is Jesus speaking this way? I explain here, because today my time has come, I have to go, this has to happen, but soon the time will also come for many mothers. So, it seems harsh for Jesus to say, don't weep for me, weep for yourselves and your children. But what he was trying to say is the following, prophetically. He was saying, today my time has come and there's nothing I can do. It's no use for you to cry. There's nothing I can do. I need to die. But in a few days, if, in fact, it took 33 years for this to be fulfilled, your children will be killed. So, what he was saying was something for 33 years later. You will cry for your children. Remember the pregnant women? He was speaking something prophetic. Possibly, those women wiped their tears, looked at him and didn't understand. They didn't understand anything he was saying, even being followers. It's very difficult to understand prophetic language out of its time. Luke 24. At the end of the account, Luke narrates that only after the words of the man of light, who was the angel, the theophany, saying that he was no longer there because he had conquered death, did they Remember his words and finally, understand. What did I say? I just said that the women had difficulty understanding. And here it proves, right at the beginning of chapter 24, that after the man spoke, when they saw that the body of Jesus was not there, that's when they said, now we understand everything you were saying about the 3 days that Jesus was always saying after the third day, delta day. But what delta day is this that I don't understand? Mary Magdalene, Joanna, and Mary, the mother of James, and the others who were with them, told the other male disciples, but they did not believe the women. Then you might say, Professor, you've already mentioned this in the other gospel. But here there's an addition, because everything they testified seemed. There's an addendum, an addition in a good sense. Everything they testified seemed like madness. It's not just a matter of sexism, and that women couldn't be witnesses at that time, but because they really couldn't believe it. And if you think that only, Thomas had difficulty. Peter, the professor, the leader, had difficulty when he heard these women who were closer to Jesus than he was speak. He ran to the tomb to confirm their testimony. Did you know? Peter ran there because only after he saw the empty tomb, that's when he began to believe. Luke narrates the 2 students of the 72 on the way to Emmaus. This story is very beautiful. We've seen it in part, but look how beautiful it is. It's good to record this forever, beyond what is already recorded here in the Codex. As they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus, I want everyone to read with me. I love this Jesus.
1, 2, 3, let's go. Jesus. Jesus acted as if he wanted, but ahead is one of my favorite revelations.
Oh, how beautiful. If Luke hadn't written this, I would never know. Jesus acted as if. Do you know how to interpret text? He was going further. He wasn't actually going further. He pretended. Reveal.
Which is easier to say, your sins are forgiven, or get up and walk?
This is so beautiful. In the original Bible, the chalice, I reveal here the God of the sieve incarnate. How sentimental. Not dramatic, a bit melancholic, fair, discerning. He always wants to know just one thing from all of us. How much we value, how much we love him, how much we love the truth. To the point of acting as if he was going further. Today, we call it in our informal language pretending. And Jesus was pretending. And why did he do that? Because he wanted to know if they really loved him, if they really valued his presence. And sometimes I do that here. And what do people say? Many bad things. They think many bad things. But I do as Jesus did. But did they insist a little? A little?
No.
A little? No. They insisted a lot with him. Stay with us, for the night is coming, the day is already ending. Then he went in to stay with them. Wouldn't it have been much easier for him to say, I'll stay because it's already in my plan? Do you remember Zacchaeus? Did he need an invitation? He looked and said, Today I will stay at your house. Not here, here. He was pretending. He pretended he was leaving, a little step forward, another little step forward, another little sandal, lifting his foot slowly. Stay with us, Lord. Really? Stay with us, Lord. I don't know. Stay with us, Lord. No, I don't think so. This is your God. Then you say, what's all this for? Leadership and melancholy are a mystery. After Jesus taught everything about the original Bible on the way, you know he gave a lesson to these two disciples about the Bible, right? He went through the entire Old Testament about the prophets. He cited several passages about the death of his body. They still hadn't recognized him. Only in their house at night, when breaking bread in the house, did they recognize. But now, when breaking bread in the house with them, they recognized him. Why? Because certainly Jesus did some movement, something with the bread, a way of lifting, breaking, speaking that only he did. And this way of his doing it was never recorded because it doesn't matter. It's not a ritual. God didn't even want this to be recorded because if it were recorded, people would be doing it the same way even today. Everyone would be lifting the bread the same way and trying to repeat it just like him, thinking that this saves. But this unique way of his doing it, they recognized him. And right after they recognized him, he disappeared from their sight. In other words, that was the purpose. The moment they recognized Jesus, he vanishes. You know, right, that the first question after they recognized him would be, how did you conquer death? Where did you go? Where were you these 3 days? Tell us. Before they could ask, he, poof, disappeared. Then, one said to the other, that's why my heart was burning while he was teaching. It was him, and we didn't realize it. They ran to the 11 closest disciples and told them everything that happened. And look how beautiful it is. Look at this duality. And when they finished speaking, they said, he walked with us, gave us a lesson, our hearts were burning. We saw him and he came in and broke the bread. When we recognized him, he disappeared. As soon as they finished telling the story, Jesus appears. Again. They said Jesus disappeared. And now Jesus appears in the midst of all of them, saying, receive my peace. He passed through the wall, appeared among them and said, receive my peace. They were so frightened by that spiritualism. And scared, frightened and scared, that they thought they were seeing a spirit. And then Jesus said, touch me, and see, a spirit does not have flesh and bones, nor bones. As you can see, I have. But they still had that suspicious look on their faces. So Jesus ate a piece of broiled fish. He said, do you have anything to eat here? There's a broiled fish, bring it to me. Again, he ate in front of them to prove that he was not just a spirit. It's like because the resurrected body eats. So, today, there are spiritual manifestations out there, and you say this is that. You believe in this, believe in that. But they don't eat fish. They don't break bread, right? So, the resurrection of a true spirit, it has to eat normally. It doesn't need to eat, but it can eat. And here, he says, this is what I taught you for 3.5 years, and you didn't understand. The whole Bible speaks of my death. The third day, the third day, the third day. And now it has been fulfilled. Can you imagine the joy of Jesus for? So many times he said this and couldn't. And now, for the first time, after eating this little fish, look at them and say, finally, now, you understand. In the hardest way, right? Now you will go to all nations and teach what I have taught you. These 1,260 days. But first you will start with Jerusalem. Last reveal.
A little snack that I've tasted all my life.
This is the God of time. Ouroboros. Everything begins in Jerusalem. Everything ends in Jerusalem. It's beautiful, isn't it? It starts in Jerusalem, ends in Jerusalem. In Jerusalem, you will receive authority to go to the world. Then, Luke narrates the beginning of Jesus' farewell euphological ascent, which he will only detail and conclude at the beginning. of the book of Acts of the Apostles, also authored by him. It's very interesting the way he ends the book of Luke and begins the book of Acts. It's the same thing. And here, another mistake, because the book of Acts should not have been separated from Luke. It should have been done. Mark, Matthew, John, and then, lastly, Luke. Already. Starting Acts right after, because it's Luke who writes Acts and it's Luke who. If you take the last verses of Luke and the first of Acts, you'll see that it's a continuation. That's it, good people of God. So many beautiful things in just one program. And I want to see, because tomorrow there are more revelations from the 12th lesson. Then there's the 13th lesson. And I want to see you review this next week without forgetting anything. I end this program with great joy, bidding you farewell here. Bidding farewell. Here, also in the mothership of the people. And beyond. All of you who will watch later, the majority. The chat folks. Now I have a name for the chat folks, the chatters. The chatters. New music. I haven't heard it yet. It's new to me. Also, Dark Music by Louise, which will be on the 5th album of Philosophy X. The 4th album will be released next week on all platforms for free. Let's go, music, Dark. Louise, Sao Paulo, let's see. Tomorrow, the 12th class, 1,260 days of verb. Mission of Symbiar at 60 days of verb. Days of life. Because Paulo was saying the following here, there is no rapture. Here there is Maria.